Wow, this brings back memories. I remember when I was shooting a television show called Flipside, and I kept getting notes every week. Probably written by Gene Simmons. They were handwritten, and they included backstage passes to see Kiss, whoever Kiss was. Well, after I finished shooting the 13 weeks of the show, I decided maybe I'd have more fun in the music business. So I decided to go see this group, Kiss. And one night, an advertising executive and myself traveled over to the Diplomat Hotel. Yes, the famous Diplomat, kind of a rundown hotel. We worked our way around the holes and sat down in the front row. Well, this was different, all right. Kiss came out. They had black jeans on, a few studs, had some firelights, and some smoke. They used smoke even then. Well, we listened to this group called Kiss with their partial makeup. They didn't have all the makeup yet, but they had part of it. And said, well, this is certainly different. They are certainly performers. They definitely were performers. And next to me was a young girl screaming and hollering and telling me how great they were. They're wonderful. Oh, you've got to sign them. This group is great. They're my favorite. I found out later it was Peter's sister. But in any case, I left that night after speaking to Paul and Gene and told them we should get together in a week or so and discuss their career. A few days later, they came up to my office and we discussed what we could do. I said, why don't you give me a chance, at least give me 30 days. I'll see if I can get you a record deal, and then we can decide whether we're going to stay together or not. They agreed. And within those 30 days, I had talked to Neil Bogart. Neil Bogart had done one of my television shows, and I knew him pretty well, and I also knew he was leaving Buddha Records to start a new record company, soon to be called Casablanca. So Neil was looking for talent. I said I saw a unique band, a little over the top, wore makeup, but they were very persistent, very exciting, and I thought it could work. Neil said, well, do you have any tapes? I said, well, I'll get you a demo and see what you think. Sure enough, they brought a demo to the office. The demo was done by Eddie Kramer. Very good demo. Had a lot of good songs that all of you know, like Firehouse and Strutter and Black Diamond. Anyway, I brought it to Neil. And Neil gave it to a couple of his producers. The two producers at Buddha then were Kenny Kerner and Richie Wise, and they had recorded a number of hits for him at Buddha, and they were going to travel to L.A. to be part of the new record label called Casablanca. Anyway, he brought it to them, and he said, look it, what do you think? If you like them, I think we'll sign this group. Well, both Richie and Kenny were rock and rollers and loved the idea of recording a rock and roll band, even though they didn't know about the makeup and what crazies they were. Well, eventually Neil said they would sign him. I told the guys, and within 30 days we had a record deal, and we proceeded to do the album. When we were signed to Casablanca, Casablanca was backed by Warner Brothers Records. And when they first got a load of what Neil had signed, i.e. the Kiss band with the makeup, they weren't really sure. In fact, they were positive that Kiss wouldn't make it. So after the album was done, there was a memo passed around Warner Brothers that maybe they shouldn't quite think about working this band. After all, how could a band with makeup make it? And they'd probably be gone soon. So just avoid working the band. Well, this memo got in the hands of Neil Bogart. One of his friends at Warner's tipped him off, and he went crazy. He just didn't like that at all. How dare they go against him? So he had a meeting with the executives at Warner's and said, look it, how can you work against me on this new label? They said, look at Neil, we really don't believe that this Kiss group can make it. Why don't you just look for some other artist? Neil said no, but he did call me one night before he made his final decision to leave Warner's and said, look, at Warner's does not want the group with makeup. Do you think you'd go and ask them if they would take their makeup off? I told Neil I didn't think so, but I had a meeting with the group and told him what was happening, and we all agreed that we couldn't possibly do it. Called back Neil and said, Neil, look, we're not going to take off the makeup. Neil then proceeded talking to Warner Brothers about whether or not they would go along with the Kiss project. They said they didn't feel it was right, and Neil said, would you let me out of my contract? They worked out a deal to let Neil out of his contract. There was only one problem, though. There wasn't any money. That was a real problem. Neil had to mortgage his home just to keep the company going. And this is where this famous American Express story comes in. Seeing there was no money, I decided to put the tour on my American Express card. Well, I wasn't used to putting any more than about $100 on my American Express card, and in 1 month it was $25,000. I can still remember the call. Mr. Aucoin, do you think you're going to pay this? You seem to have used your American Express card quite a lot this month. Oh, of course, I said. Well, of course I couldn't. But fortunately, they allowed me to pay it over a period of months, and we finally got through the tour and finally got more money into the company. One of the scariest things that happened with the first show the Kiss did for Casablanca and Aucoin Management. It was at the Academy of Music. Well, we had put the show together, and we had pyrotechnics, we had a candelabra, Gene was spitting fire, we had smoke, and we also had little balls of flash paper, which Gene would go to the candelabra and then throw up in the air, and they would just light and explode in the air. Well, the first night, Gene was so nervous that when he took the flash paper, instead of throwing it up in the air, he threw it into the audience. And oh my gosh, it hit one of the guys sitting in the first row. A real rock and roller, but he was singed. This was rather scary. We thought he might have been terribly hurt or burned. We thought maybe it might have been the end of their career, not the beginning of the career. He turned out to be a true rock and roller, and from that point on, he got free tickets to all the Kiss shows. One of the unique things about the first album was the idea that we were going to do a kissing contest. Neil had thought up a promotion that would be unique in promoting Kiss and the name Kiss, and that was to have a kissing contest at all the major radio stations around the country. So he put up the money to promote this, the kissing contest, and then needed something on record to promote the kissing contest and needed something to promote it on radio. Came up with the idea that we would do the song Kissing Time, which had been a hit record many years before, of which none of us really wanted to do it, especially Kiss, who thought it was a little too popish and certainly wasn't their type of music. But Neil persisted, and we knew we had to go along with it. After all, this was the promotion of the first record that they had ever done. So we went back into the studio and cut Kissing Time. Kissing Time was promoted in every radio station across the country, along with the Kiss contests. The kissing contest turned out to be very successful. We're not sure how much it promoted Kiss, but it certainly got enough kissing contests around the country so that the radio stations knew who Casablanca was, which enabled us to get some airplay. But most radio stations didn't like the idea of Kiss, their songs, or their makeup. After Dress to Kill, a couple of special things happened. One happened with a town in Michigan called Cadillac, Michigan. And Michigan was a big breakout area for Kiss. We had a lot of fans there. And in Cadillac, Michigan High School, they would play Kiss music in the halftime during the football games. And when they did, they always won the game. And I got a call from the coach one day and said, the morale is down in the school a bit and everything. Do you think Kiss might be able to come out here? It would really be great, and it would kind of symbolize everything and all the winning games we had. And I said, well, it's a possibility, but we have to do something special if that's going to happen. Do you think people would put on the Kiss makeup? Do you think everyone would wear Kiss makeup, something like that? And he said, well, we could talk about it. And finally we talked about it enough that everyone agreed that that's what would happen. We'd have Kiss Day at the high school. And so we sent directions out to them on how to put Kiss makeup, and we got all sorts of makeup to send to the high school so everyone could do it. We got a little film crew together to go out and shoot it, thinking it might be something that was unique. We got to Cadillac, Michigan, and lo and behold, the whole high school was in Kiss makeup. But not just the high school kids. The teachers were in Kiss makeup. The principal was in Kiss makeup. And it was quite amazing. And some of the police were in Kiss makeup. The firemen were in Kiss makeup. They had changed the names of the streets. And so we went through the streets of Cadillac, Michigan, on top of fire trucks, and with everyone along the side, not everyone, but most of the people along the sides of the streets in Kiss makeup. One of the strangest moments was the next morning when we had a breakfast with the mayor and one of the councilmen and one of the senators from the state. And we walked into this breakfast restaurant, and my gosh, the mayor was in Kiss makeup. The mayor's wife was in Kiss makeup. The senator was in Kiss makeup. It was quite a breakfast. Turned out to be one of the most exciting days. And that breakfast, we were also presented with the key to Cadillac, Michigan. And we left Cadillac, Michigan from the football field in a helicopter. No one really knew that the helicopter only flew for about 5 minutes because that's all we could afford to do. It kind of went over the trees and landed in a parking lot, and we got out and got into cars and left for New York. The next Kiss adventure came with the live album. An exciting moment because it was not only the album that finally broke Kiss, but there were other things that happened. During the recording of the live album, we realized that we had not gotten any royalty statements from the record company. And I knew as a manager it was my obligation to follow through and to get that done. And when we weren't receiving them, I had to go to our lawyers and kind of threaten the record label on what would happen if they didn't come through with the royalties for Kiss. Now, we had a great relationship with the record label, but this is something that had to be done. And during this time, the record label actually went to Kiss and tried to take over the management of Kiss. But Kiss decided to stay with me, and we had a long run together. Many other things happened during that time, too. Other labels were trying to get Kiss, knowing that we might break up with Casablanca. But we then re-signed with Casablanca and had our first major hit, Kiss Alive. Kiss Alive tour was very interesting. We finally broke out of Detroit, playing Cobo Hall in a major concert. And after the live tour ended in the States, we went to Europe for the first time. Rather scary for the four guys. They had never been to Europe. It was quite a change of pace. We got to London, and they realized that everything closed up early, that the television stations didn't have the shows that they wanted to see. Not only didn't they have the shows, but it went off the air at 11 o'clock. You can imagine the four of them at 11:15 climbing the walls, not being able to eat, not being able to watch television. It was a little crazy, and I think the first day they got there, they wanted to return to the States. Paul Stanley. Well, Paul is the musical backbone of the group. He really is. Probably more of a writer, producer, and obviously, he's the singer. There were many things that have happened with Paul. When I first met Paul was a little overweight. And I know you don't think of Paul like that today because he's always taking good care of himself. But he was a little overweight, a little chubby. And when we went on the first road tour back in '74, he got sick in Atlanta. And he got the flu, and it lasted for a few days. And he lost about 10 pounds. I'll never forget this. And he called me and he said, "Bill, I really look good now." He said, "I'm never going to put that weight on again." And he never did. He really kept himself in great shape. The one thing I never could understand about Paul is every time we went to Los Angeles, he would lose his voice. And I suspect it was probably the stress. You're going to Los Angeles, you're going to be playing for thousands and thousands of people, including lots of celebrities and everything else. But we always used to lose Paul's voice. Somewhere in Los Angeles it used to go, and what we used to have to do is have a throat specialist come, and we used to freeze his vocal cords before the show because he used to get laryngitis. And before every show, we would freeze his vocal cords, and it would last for about half hour, 45 minutes, and he would come off the stage and would have to do it again so he could get through the show. I remember one time when we were touring Australia and New Zealand, we had gotten to New Zealand, and Paul was going out with a famous actress from Hollywood who was shooting a movie on the other side of the island, New Zealand, quite a few hours away. And he came in to me one night and he said, I really would like to see her, Bill. We have a couple of days, and what do you think I should do? How do you think I can see her? I said, well, I guess you could rent a jet. And we thought it back and forth and talked about it for a bit, and Paul finally decided he'd rent a jet and he'd fly down to see her. Well, when Paul went to see her, he wanted to make a big entrance. So what he did is he asked the pilot of the jet to fly over the shooting area where they were shooting the movie. So he buzzed her a couple of times and everything, and then they went and landed the jet. What he didn't know further was that they had to stop all shooting, and the director was absolutely beside himself. This nut that was flying around over their heads while they were trying to shoot a movie. They had to stop shooting it that afternoon, and of course the actress found out it was Paul coming to see her to spend an evening. I just remembered a story. I know that when I used to go up to their rooms in a hotel, I never knew quite what was going to happen to me when I walked through the door, whether I was going to step in a bucket of water or whether a bucket was going to fall on my head and I'd be soaked. And Paul was famous for this. You never really knew. The first time we went to Japan, it was rather unique because we had convinced Pan American Airways to give us a 747. Now, you can imagine going to Kennedy Airport in New York and seeing your 747 waiting for you. It was renamed and painted the Clipper Kiss Special. Well, it was just unbelievable. And on top of it, we took all the press with us as well. So we had the KISS group and all the management people, as well as a lot of press. We filled up the plane with press to take them to Japan. There were a lot of things that happened around that. There was also a freighter, an air freighter, another Pan American 707 that had to carry the KISS stage. Now, the group had been on tour, and they had not seen this KISS stage before because it was built and designed by Kenny Anderson, who was the head of our production department at Aucoin Management. And it was put on a freighter to be sent to Japan so that when they arrived at Japan, they would see it for the first time set up. Well, a little quirk that happened at the airport in upstate New York was the set turned out to be a lot heavier than we had expected. So when they loaded it on the plane, we had to make a decision. We either had to leave part of the set home, or we had to come up with another solution. Well, fortunately, the two pilots who flew it to Tokyo decided that they would fly the plane unpressurized and have to wear oxygen masks all the way to Tokyo so that the weight of the plane could handle the KISS set. Tokyo was kind of unique, unusual, obviously a completely different culture, but we had lots of fans there. There were hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of fans at the airport. And we didn't realize that we were going to have a little problem at the airport. We actually put all our makeup on the plane, on the KISS, the Clipper KISS special. And when we arrived, they walked out of the 747, and there was a wall of photographers from floor to ceiling. They had put up ladders and chairs and everything, and you just couldn't even get by them. And as we finally got by the photographers, the customs people came to us and said, who are these people? We said, well, the KISS. Well, no, this doesn't look like what they look on their passport. And, of course, we then had to go into a room and take off their makeup, which was really a hard job after just putting it back on again. And then they had to put it on once more to leave the terminal where there were thousands of kids waiting for them outside. KISS's Budokan concert was very successful, thousands and thousands of fans, and it was the first time that they were ever broadcast nationally by doing a television special directly from the Budokan. Here's an interesting story, kind of unusual. I left New York to go out on tour with the guys for a few days, and I arrived in a city. I can't tell you which city it was because there were so many cities we were always in, but I come from the airport, and I finally arrived backstage at the arena, and I see someone running into the arena as I arrive. I'm saying, oh, something's up. It's almost as though he was tipping them off that I was coming. And so I go to the arena door, and I walk in, and everyone's a little quiet. I still don't know what's happening. I'm walking backstage, and on the side of the stage, I hear this vocal group, but it's led by a woman, not by the guys. But I hear this backup group. I turn the corner, and who's there but Gracie Slick singing with four backup people that I didn't recognize at first. But, of course, who were they? They were KISS and Drag. Yes, Paul Stanley went out and bought dresses for each one of the guys, and they decided they were going to be the backup group for Gracie Slick. Well, Gracie was on the tour because she was going out with our lighting director, who she eventually married. But this was quite a day. And I walked in, and there they were, four KISS members in full drag, backing up Gracie Slick, singing me a song and serenading me as I walked into the arena. That didn't last long. They started racing after me. I think they had an extra dress, but I wasn't sure. Ace Frehley. Ace Frehley is truly an original. Sweetheart, probably would take the shirt off his back for you. A kidder and an all-around fun guy to be around. Ace, I'll tell you one story that Ace played on Gene and Paul. I think it was in Kansas City. I'm not quite sure, but in any case, I get a call from Gene and Paul on the road, and I'm in New York, and they tell me that Ace had been drinking, and he's just so out of his mind that he won't be able to do the show that night, and they're very upset. Oh, my, what are we going to do about the fans, the promoter, the this, the that? You're going to have to come right out. So I go to the airport, I get on a plane, I arrive, and Gene and Paul are waiting for me, and they're telling me these horror stories about Ace. Oh, my goodness, we had to carry him into the hotel. He won't be able to stand up. Never mind about playing the show. We'll never do it. I said, okay, let me go and see what's happening, and I asked the road manager where he was. He's up in his room. Okay. So I go up to the room. I knock on the door. I say, Acifer. I always used to call him Acifer. And he said, oh, Bill, come on in. So I go in, and Ace is sitting at a table, reading a book, having a beer. Now, I know something's wrong, because if he's really out of his mind, he'd be laying down out of it someplace. So I say, "Hi, Ace, what's happening?" Well, I'm just kind of getting, Gene and Paul. I mean, it's about time I could play a trick on them. So anyway, so we go through this whole thing, and I realize he's done them in. He's been fooling them all day long. The road crew, he's talked the road crew into having to carry him into the hotel. And, he's done this up just right. So they're really upset. I'm all the way out there from New York. So Ace and I decide, okay, we'll carry this through just a little bit longer. In any case, we tell the road manager to tell Gene and Paul, don't worry, we'll somehow get Ace there. We don't know how. We'll stand him up and get him to the sound check. Don't worry about it. You go to the sound check. Somehow we'll get Ace there. Meanwhile, Ace and I get it together, sneak out of the back door of the hotel, and go to the sound check, get all his amps set up properly. And by the time Gene and Paul gets there, he's already playing and out on stage and rehearsing the material. So they finally knew they'd finally been had. But that was Ace. Ace was just a practical joker and always lots of fun. Another story that Ace, and Ace has many of them, but one other I can think of is the time in Stockholm, when the promoter decided that it was a night out, he should take us out to dinner, and there was a unique club. And in this particular restaurant club, they had a pool in the middle of it. And everyone that sat around the tables around the pool had a little remote control unit, and you could have your own little shrimp boat that would come out of the kitchen, and you'd guide it to your table full of fresh shrimp, and you'd eat it. Then you'd send your boat back to the kitchen, they'd fill it up with shrimp again, and you'd bring it to your table. Well, the promoter thought we should all loosen up a bit, and he introduced us to a drink called Jägermeisters. Well, the Jägermeister was not popular at that time, certainly not in the States, and we had no idea what it was. Oh, the promoter did. He thought it would loosen everyone up and everyone would have a great time. Well, it certainly did loosen us up. By the time we finished, Ace was walking around the pool, picking up the radio control boats and hand-delivering the shrimp to everyone's table. Well, the owner of the club was a little crazy. He thought Ace would be falling through the pool, which was made of fiberglass and about 3 feet off the ground. So he saw Ace and his feet going through the bottom of the pool and wrecking his pool. But we finally got Ace out of the pool and back to the hotel, and we had one raucous night. Let's see if we can think of one more Ace story I can tell you. Oh, yes, there's one when I was heading up to Ace's house in Connecticut. And Ace had just finished this underground studio, and we would do demos there of new songs and so forth. We called it Ace's Bunker. And we'd go down up to Ace. You never really quite knew what was going to happen. And one day I'm driving up, going down Ace's driveway, and I get buzzed by a helicopter. It was a pretty good-sized helicopter. I mean, it really shook me up because I didn't quite understand what was happening. And Ace used to have these radio-control helicopters. And you'd come down his driveway, and he'd hide behind the house or in a bush someplace, and he would buzz your car as you came down his driveway. Well, you never knew what you were going to have when you met Ace or when you were at his house, but it was always fun.